Hello, wonderful. It is Sarah K Ramsey, and I'm here with Dr. Camila Williams. How are you, Camila?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, so awesome. So she is a board certified psychologist and life coach, specializing in stress, anxiety, and perfectionism. She's also had a decade working with vets, so she would definitely be a great conversation around trauma, PTSD, all that good stuff that you guys are always asking me about. So, Camilla, tell us why you got into this or what you love about it.
Yes. In all my training to become a psychologist throughout graduate school, I worked in so many different settings, and I fell in love with working at the VA setting with veterans, combat PTSD and military sexual trauma. And then, of course, underlying all of that was childhood abuse and relational trauma. And so I kind of forged a path in the career path in the VA for myself. But then once I have three kids, twin 3-year-olds. I'm mixing my words here.
Twin
Uh,
3-year-olds. Oh, and
yeah.
I was complaining to you about mama stress before we got on the
Uh,
call.
so,
I should
right.
have been asking
But
you.
it's kind of those life transitions where you really start thinking about like, what do I want to do? Like, how can I
Absolutely.
manage my time better with my family? And I kept hearing over and over again from all my clients, like, I wish I learned this
Yeah.
before. And I realized like the mental health stigma was preventing a lot of people from accessing and learning these tools. And so that's when I started branching out into the life coaching to really like, I want to teach people these tools that can really help them along the way.
So I'd be curious to know your thoughts on the difference between therapy and life coaching, which I did not prep you for that question. But that's a huge question in people's minds, right? Like, okay, you're already a psychologist, so why would you coach? Like, what's the difference between the two of those?
Yeah. I actually feel like there's a lot of overlap. I know that, for the ethics of therapy, like we really need to separate and make a distinction between when a relationship is therapy and when a relationship is coaching. And that's why we focus so much on the distinctions. But honestly, what drew me to coaching was the fact that I was already doing that with my
Yeah,
clients.
yeah,
And so it depends on the type of therapy. So I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, and that overlaps so well with the coaching community. It's about setting very concrete goals, actionable steps that you take week to week. You're measuring change month to month. It's not just like a talk therapy,
sure.
support, validation. And so there was a lot of overlap. And so I kind of do see like coaching does tend to focus more on right now, what's going on, what can I change? Therapy does venture a little bit more into why am I this way? Let me understand myself on a deeper level. And the what's going on right now is more clinical issues of more severe symptoms.
Mhm.
Whereas coaching tends to be like, okay, once we got the symptoms under control, now what can we do?
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
have a phrase, and it says, "Get past the past, get
yes.
real about the present, so you can get serious about your future." Right. So
Oh, I
that
love that.
that
I love
aligns with
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
that,
what?
just one thing that like therapists will come out, like therapists do work on the positive and future. Like that is also part of therapy. So I know a lot of therapists is like, it's not just coaching, we do that too. But that is like one of the biggest distinctions is that focus.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So let's talk about what when people say, "Oh, I wish I had known that earlier. I wish I
Mhm.
had learned that earlier." What are some themes and things that that people wish they had known earlier?
That certain behaviors that we think are designed to help us actually come out as a self-defense, a psychological self-defense. And so one of my specialties is perfectionism. So
Mhm.
that was like the biggest theme I saw across so many of my clients is this tendency to want to do everything perfectly. I got to get it right. And they always walk around with this core belief of I'm not good enough and everything I do is never good enough. And even after they accomplish something, they're still going over like what they could have done to do better. And they start to learn that this is a pattern of thinking that really came about as a way to protect the ego, to protect me from getting hurt, from getting abused, from getting judged and criticized, and as a way to try to get love and acceptance. Because when I do well and perfectly, people pay attention, they love me, they accept me. And so it really, like, almost everybody that I've worked with trauma had some type of perfectionism going on in one area of their life. And so that was one of the big things that came out.
I think that's an important distinction in one area of your life, right?
Yes.
Because I do not consider myself a perfectionist in the way people normally would think. It's like, oh, it has to be perfect. I definitely believe in like, get it done, perfect it later. It's the only way I can move forward, you know, and I believe in that. But you picked up on something. And I want to overall be good at all the things.
Yeah.
So that's that perfectionist piece that I was like maybe even hiding from myself, right? Like, no, I don't think I'm a perfectionist. And it's like, I don't have to be perfect at the individual things, but the whole package, I would love to be pretty perfect.
And that's a common thing too. Like people's like, I don't worry so much about getting it perfect. And I'm like, but do you worry a lot about it not being good enough? And so like, there's like that other side to it too.
So especially if someone has experienced relational trauma, right? And they feel like they're stuck in perfectionism, stuck in hyper performing, stuck in not good enough, stuck in whatever. You know, what are some tools to get unstuck, to move past, to get the trauma out and get the joy in?
Yeah. And so obviously I'm biased because I'm board certified in behavioral and cognitive psychology. So my approach is always that double, you got the cognitive piece, which is how I think, it's my mindset, and that behavioral piece, which is what I'm doing. And so the mindset is really learning to identify all these patterns of thinking that we've kind of fallen into as a way to protect ourselves over time, but that now are keeping us stuck. And so, you know, what are these unhelpful patterns? Learning to recognize it, identify it. A good example is kind of all or nothing, right? So when you're in trauma and you're constantly on high alert, right? The body just takes in information as this is either life or death, this is safe or not, I can trust you or I can't. Like there's no middle ground. And it makes perfect sense when you're in a dangerous situation. Problem is when you're trying to navigate the complexities of any relationship,
Right.
that kind of all or nothing approach can really interfere. So I'll hear this from people like, oh, my friend did this one thing, I can't trust them anymore. Like I thought they were my friend, I just couldn't. Like that's very all or nothing. So it's learning to like, we got to slow that down instead of looking at it as I trust you or I don't. It's a continuum. What's challenge, what's the evidence, what are some things you can trust them with? And people are like, well, I can trust them to answer the phone, I can trust them to call me back, I can trust them to show up and have fun, I can trust them to be a shoulder to cry on. I will never trust them to lend money though. They wouldn't pay me back. And they're a bit of a gossip. So I probably wouldn't trust them with some of the more sensitive things. So you start to create this picture of, for the most part, I can trust this person with most things. There are some things that maybe I can't. And this forces you to kind of really slow down and not just completely write off your relationships. On the flip side, I see a lot of people who've gone through interpersonal trauma who are, they keep trying to fix it. Like, I can fix this, I can make it better. And when we do this trust exercise, it's like, this person is mostly untrustworthy. Like you've gone over and over and over again, and they showed you that you cannot trust them to, be there for you, to support you, to help you, to have your back. So like now you have evidence that maybe this person is toxic and you don't need them. So it's just really learning to slow down kind of that survival system and turn the thinking part of the brain back on.
So in the conversation of cognitive dissonance, right? So the pattern, the data is, whoa, behind closed doors, this person is this way. And out in public, this person looks this way, right? Because that's what, or at the beginning of the relationship, this person was one way.
Yeah.
Right. And and that fix it piece, right? Oh, if I can just get back to them, that's who they really are. Yeah. And the bad behavior, I don't want to say bad behavior, the things that are not working out so well, the red flags, the anger, the dismissal, the flippant words, those type of things, right? That's not who they really are. Yeah. And I'm like, no, it is who they really are. People's behavior in context within relationship is who they are to you, which is the question, right?
Yeah. And I don't mean to make light of it, but I will joke around with my clients sometimes that that's the crazy making formula.
Yeah.
You want the formula on how to make someone go crazy. It's like, I'm one way with you behind closed doors and I'm a different way with everyone else out in public. It makes you second guess yourself. Everybody else is giving you one piece of information and you just start wondering, like, am I the one going crazy here? Because it doesn't match. That dissonance, it creates so much stress.
The last 2 months of my life had been great, like just real hell. My stepson was in a wreck where there was another child killed in the car wreck. We had a family vacation we were supposed to go to, multiple rounds of COVID in my family. The 3 funerals that I went to, like on top of that, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, how are you not falling apart right now? And my answer was exactly what you just said. No, I can handle anything other than someone maliciously trying to turn me against myself. That is the worst thing that you can go through. Everything else is doable, right? It's like, okay, I need to grieve. I needed this. I need to step, but when that crazy making, when someone flips you on yourself, where you no longer trust yourself, it's the worst thing in the world. It's the scariest place in the world to be.
Yeah. And that's, that's trauma. You're so afraid of getting hurt again. You second guess every decision because what if it's the wrong one? What if this sets them off? What if this disappoints them? What if this gets me hurt or criticized? And so, like, just think about the mental energy that just drains the energy if you're going about your day, like, overthinking and second guessing every move you make.
Well, and that's what people say, oh no, how do you get so much done now? I said, well, I don't do that anymore. Right? Like, when you stop doing that piece, it's all the energy that you spend on trying to get that person to act differently. Right? I call it trying to change a crocodile into a bunny rabbit. Oh, they just need a little more love. Well, no, they hasn't been working for the last, okay, so you have 40 years of data that hasn't worked. So let's go, and not to make light of it, right? We have to almost make light of it because it's just like, we're talking about trauma. Yeah. We're talking about not trusting yourself, so we have to kind of laugh at ourselves to make it through, and to get to the other side, most importantly, because it's not just about making through, it's about making it through making it through amazing, and getting to that place of trusting yourself again. I love the example of, what are they trustworthy in? I think about it in terms of, like, if you're in a play, right? Like, every player doesn't have to play all the parts. If that person's really good to exercise with, that they can play that part in your life. That doesn't mean you have to leave your children with them.
Yes, I love that example.
Right? So what are some other exercises that you would do with people to either heal that cognitive dissonance, match together Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or Mrs. Hyde, or learning how to rebuild trust either in yourself or others?
Yeah. And so I love to, like, come at things from a values-based approach. And so I do a lot of exercises with my clients on really identifying what their values are, because whenever we start listing values, I'll break it down. I'm like, okay, where did this come from? Who taught you that? And you start to realize, oh, my mom really valued, like, cleanliness and organization. Like, this was more her. This isn't really me. Right. Or, my dad, kind of taught me, like, achievement, gold star, go getter, A+. And I'm actually okay, as long as it gets done. Like, I want other. And so you start to separate, like, how many of your values have been imposed by others on you growing up, and what's that, like, really your core value. Because what that helps you do is, when your brain starts to kind of spiral out into all the criticism and all the negative thoughts, we have a hard time kind of shutting that off. Like, our brain just does what it wants to do. But if you can remember, like, but I really value this. So, like, let's say just going out with friends, right? There's a part of your brain is like, I don't know what to say, and I'm going to be awkward, and I don't know who's going to be there, and I don't know if it's a safe place, and I don't know how long it's going to be, right? You're overthinking it. You're building up your anxiety. But if you remind yourself, like, okay, I hear you, brain. I'm not going to challenge all that negativity right now. I'm just going to focus on, I really value friendship. And if I want friendship and connection in my life, I need to do this. And so it's a way to help move people into action. And that's more of the behavioral side of it. So, cognitive behavioral, a lot of people, smart girls, smart women, can over intellectualize and get stuck on the cognitive piece. Like, I can be logical and rational and think my way through anything. It doesn't mean I'm actually going to do it. And so that's why you
I
have
call
to
that
have
smart girl syndrome. Yeah,
smart girl
that's a
syndrome.
huge piece of my work is that smart girl syndrome. And it's like, if I work hard enough, I can change the crocodile into a bunny. Or if I work hard enough, I can think my way through whatever it is. And we get stuck in our heads and don't take action in our life.
Yeah. And so I'll get some clients, like, they're taking notes, they're keeping their journals, they're doing all the work on paper and in their head, but they're not actually taking action. And that's where that behavior piece. So really kind of getting in tune with your values to have like that value-driven action helps you do some of the behaviors. The other thing that happens with the behavior side of it, and I hope I can explain it in a short amount of time, is that when you experience chronic trauma, your body is always on edge. You're kind of always in that survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we cannot think clearly. So like if I'm going on a hike and there's a mountain lion, right? If I see that mountain lion and I stop, okay, hold on. Let me think about what are the chances that he's actually going to attack me. Let me write out the pros and cons of running away. Like, we don't have time for that. Like, survival mode is just like, just act. So the thinking part of the brain gets turned off. So when you're in chronic trauma, like in a toxic relationship, you're always on edge. You can't really think clearly. So you have to learn how to soothe the body, how to flip the switch and take your body out of that fight or flight to a place where you're a little more relaxed and you can think more clearly. Then all the mindset work starts to really sink in. So that's where, people have probably heard before, it's the deep breathing, it's the meditation, it's the mindfulness, it's the yoga, any kind of mind body work. And some people are like, well, it's not fight or flight. For me, it's freeze. So again, chronic trauma, you burn out. Like, I can't maintain this level of alertness and on edge the whole time. So you shut down, you just go numb. I don't feel anything. It's a way to just avoid feeling the pain. So that same kind of mind body work, the breathing, actually helps you reconnect the mind to the body because you're so disconnected. And so if I do deep breathing, it's bringing this awareness to the body. And that's so scary for someone who's gone through a lot of trauma because the pain is in the body. But the deep breathing helps you reconnect. The meditation helps you stay present in your body instead of letting your mind kind of dissociate and wander off. So a lot of those actions that you take, like that daily self-care, are you meditating? Are you doing yoga? Are you doing stretches? Are you being aware of the emotions in your body? Can you label emotions? Actually becomes a really important piece of the healing process, because it's so easy to just get stuck in I know all the mindset tricks, right, but I just can't apply it because there's that disconnect between the mind and the body.
Yeah. Yin yoga has been especially helpful for me in that because it was interesting when I was doing yin, the instructor was telling me when I could move and when I couldn't. I mean, obviously in all yoga classes, there's a piece of that, but it was like when you're holding poses for 3 to 5 minutes, and it instantly made me feel how out of control it was, that somebody else was going to control when I could move or not. I started crying in yoga class, right? And what a gift those tears were. What a gift that experience was. And I love the yoga instructor. I'm so glad it was, and it probably did happen with somebody I knew was safe. It wasn't like some random person or anything like that. It's somebody I had knew personally as well, and trust her as well. So, but that mind body experience, it really is. And that's just such an important piece to note, to get out of your head and back into your body. And it is scary. It is scary, especially if there's been any type of physical abuse. Yeah. So how do veterans, because they would have all kinds of physical abuse that would be, I mean, just extreme, not intimate partner violence, obviously, or maybe sometimes, but
a lot, actually.
Yeah. So what are some first steps they can take? Like a daily breathing practice, set a timer on their phone? What type of advice would you give them?
Yeah. And so there's so many free apps out there. And I always tell people, like, you kind of have to explore and find kind of that mind body exercise that works for you. And so for some people, they really love the breathing. For others, it's like, that's too much time in my body and I can't handle it. So they need something a little bit more active, like a Tai Chi, or a progressive muscle relaxation, because it gives them something to focus on, instead of just sitting with themselves. And some people are like, I can't do any of that. So they'll do, the VA had like stretching classes, like we're just going to learn to stretch our bodies. And then I've had people join. My favorite story is someone who just joined a crochet, like a knitting club. And it was like, that was what they needed. Like they're moving the body and they're with other people. And it was just a way for them to kind of get present in the moment. Animals are another really good way, because it's very much a here and now and present in the moment, because animals live in the moment. Your little fur babies is another really good way. So to get started, like you asked me specifically about veterans, the VA has a whole program, and having treated trauma for over a decade, I'm always a fan when someone can do the individual work with the therapist, but also complement that with some type of mind body work outside of the therapy, so that they're getting the benefits of like healing all the way around.
That's so important. I mean, sometimes I'll ask people, what's your healing strategy? Or what problem, what problems are you trying to solve? Well, I'm trying to have a better relationship with my kids. I'm trying to get my mind under control. I'm trying to stop people pleasing. And I say, awesome. What's your healing strategy? And they say, I'm like exercising daily. And I'm like, oh, okay, so how's that going to help people pleasing?
Yeah.
We don't think about it in those ways. And it is, when you're talking about overhauling trauma, overhauling your life, creating a newer, greater, better version of yourself, it is multifaceted. I call it the diamond, we got a diamond down. Diamonds are multifaceted, which means there's different pieces of the puzzle. There's different angles, there's different sides. And one day breathwork may be the answer, and the next day knitting, and the next day, a little puppy, right? Like,
Yeah.
we are complex creatures, but the other side is so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And an easy place for someone to start, like, is I will refer to like those apps, because you can try grounding, you can try breathing, you can try mindfulness, you can try progressive muscle relaxation, you could try guided imagery. And as you try all these different things, you're going to start to pick up on what you resonate more with. And then that becomes the strategy. The really hard part with all of this is, with trauma, a lot of people tend to self-medicate as a way of numbing out the emotional pain. And you can self-medicate by over-exercising, over-sleeping, overeating, and then of course the drinking and the prescription drugs and all that other stuff. And so it becomes really hard of like, okay, I'm trying to reconnect with my body. I'm trying to be present. I don't want to numb out the pain. I tend to self-medicate to numb this stuff out. So what do I do now? Like it is a bit of a struggle for some people, because that kind of gets triggered. Again, it's like, we're not numbing out the emotional pain. We have to learn to sit with it, to tolerate it. And that's where really going through all the exercises of, I got to find the healthy way, right? Whether it's breathing or meditation, but the healthy way never works as quickly as the self-medicating way. That's the problem. Like, this is going to take time. A brief example. So I used to teach a lot of breathing meditation classes at the VA. I was doing it 2 or 3 times a week. And when I got pregnant, my colleague was like, oh, this is great. Like, you can do breathing through labor and you're going to be fine. And you're not going to need the meds, because you're so good at doing the breathing and managing whatever pain comes your way. And I'm like, all right, I got this. Man, after that first real contraction hit and I'm trying to deep breathe my way through it, I'm like, what was she talking about? This is not going to work. Give me the meds. And after, I came back from maternity leave, I was talking to her and I'm like, the deep breathing did not work at all. Like, how did that work for you? And that's when she told me, she's like, well, I do yoga every morning before work, where I'm doing the yoga breath, and I meditate 20 minutes every night before I go to sleep. And I teach the classes at the VA. And I'm like, oh, I only teach the classes. Right. I don't have a daily practice. It wasn't muscle memory for me. And so a lot of these skills, like, that's one of the things that trips up people, is that they'll do it a few times, You're like, oh, this doesn't work. It's like, no, it has to be a daily practice of muscle memory for you to really get that benefit of that relaxation, that peace, and that calm that comes from doing that kind of self-care.
That is so important because sometimes, it's like, oh, I did it and it's not working. It's like that, creating that muscle memory. I always talk about, my undergraduate degree was in piano performance, right? So when it's like the first time I played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, my hands were not in the right place. Developing that muscle memory to get me to play Beethoven, Brahms, Bach, whatever it is. And I'm a great piano player. I'm a horrible violin player. But it's not because I'm a bad musician. It's because I haven't practiced.
Yeah.
I've not practiced the violin. Yeah. It's that muscle memory, thinking of it in terms of practice and practicing calm, peace, resetting the nervous system, and having a different plan. When the trauma hits, when the uncomfortable feelings hit, when the misery hits, when the sadness hits, having a plan that is not a bottle of wine, having a plan that is not a pill, having a plan that is not a bag of chips and a gallon of ice cream. Yeah. That gallon of ice cream is my plan for about 10 years. It was a real comfort for me for 10 years. It was not good. It was not good. Awesome, Camila. So where can people find out more about you? And what message would you want to send them off with?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram. If you can follow me on social media, I try to post videos and tips, and I'll answer questions. And my takeaway, it's my favorite thought to remind everyone I work with, which is always coming back to this idea of you are doing the best you can with what you have right now. Right. And so my best when I have 3 hours of sleep is going to look very different than my best when I have 8 hours of sleep. And so to kind of have that self-compassion and that grace for yourself of like, I'm always, I made the best decision I could with what I knew and had in that moment. Now I know different, and it's okay. I don't need to beat myself up over it. As a mom, this isn't good enough. You know what? I am doing the best I can with the bandwidth I have right now at the moment. And I think we forget a lot about that little self-compassion and grace for ourselves. And I just wanted to leave your audience with that message.
I love that. Thank you so much, Camila. And thank you for helping my listeners get one step closer to becoming toxic person proof.